usually know inflation exists, but they don't necessarily put two and two together and say, okay, what is the actual number that I'm losing in purchasing power per year? Assuming these inflation statistics are reasonably accurate, and then looking at my interest rate and saying, what am I actually losing every year?
Mm.
And if people did that, if rates were shown in like inflation adjusted values, and it was just marketed as, hey, if you put your money in the bank account, you'll lose, 2 to 7% per year on average, and but it won't go down, double digits, or whatever the
Mm.
case may be, then it would be a lot less attractive to people. So I
Mm.
think some of it's literacy, some of it's we're also programmed where, if people lose 20%, that's a lot more painful than losing 2% a year for 10 years.
Yeah. According to the macro expert Lyn Alden, Bitcoin is currently a favorable investment opportunity and is considered a strong buy, although she cautions traders to remain mindful of potential volatility in the future. Recently, the price of Bitcoin has risen considerably throughout January and has reached a new high for 2023 at $25,000. Lyn Alden holds the belief that the current price increase of Bitcoin may not last for an extended period. She thinks that the actions of the U.S. Federal Reserve could present significant risks for Bitcoin in the latter half of 2023, according to the Bitcoin Bull. Alden suggests that the current value of Bitcoin presents investors with a potentially unique opportunity to acquire the leading cryptocurrency at a favorable price point. Before proceeding with the video, please ensure that you have subscribed to our channel and clicked on the notification bell icon.
So I think the person who doesn't want to spend a lot of time should be reasonably diversified, right? Because if they own let's say they all go all in on Bitcoin and Bitcoin has one of those 80% drawdowns, they're gonna sell it, right? If they're not like deep into the Bitcoin research, that if they haven't done like 1,000 hours of research on it, they're
Mm.
gonna freak out and panic when it gets cut in half, and then they're gonna lose value. So for most people, I think that some degree of diversification makes sense. You want to have your liquidity needs met with cash to some extent, and then I personally find equity investing really useful. That can be either individual stocks, or if I had less time, would be ETFs. But then I would want hard money as a notable part of that portfolio, which in my view today does include Bitcoin. And so I think it really depends on what someone's trying to optimize for. I think you can make a case where it's almost like a barbell approach, and that's kind of the way I'm approaching it, which is I focus on investments that provide pretty good income, and an income that grows with inflation on one hand, and then I also have like a slice for, like, say, Bitcoin, some gold, things like that that are kind of these bare asset alternative monies that have a
Mhm.
much slower supply growth rate on average than you're getting with fiat currencies. And the Bitcoin, you have the added kicker that it's also, arguably, if the thesis is correct, it's arguably under owned. It's still in its adoption phase.
Mhm.
And so in addition to being, like a finite asset, it's also basically still underappreciated, uh, uh, understood, and it's kind of growing into whatever total addressable market that it's eventually going to reach.
Investing in cryptocurrencies is currently considered one of the most popular asset classes. Over the last decade, Bitcoin in particular has experienced a significant surge in value, rising from just pennies to thousands of dollars per unit. Alden's view is that the increasing investment in Bitcoin is due to the availability of more investment capital, although this surge may be temporary. She further notes that some investors are anxious about the unstable performance of meme and unprofitable stocks, which may result in a consolidation or retreat of gains for some time.
Do agree that most people will not understand Bitcoin at a deep level, just like they don't understand the current system at a deep level. Most people, for example, if you pay with a credit card, they can't tell you the complex handshaking that's happening between the banks along the way, how many different entities are involved. So I do think basically Bitcoin only has to be understood by the marginal that will then shift over, and then once it hits critical mass, it's just like, well, okay, this other thing's devaluing and this thing's not devaluing, and so it just kind of works itself out over time.
Mm.
On to the prior point. So I don't set out to trade. Um, for Bitcoin, I dollar cost average in. I think that's how the majority of people should consider doing it. Basically,
Mm.
just determine what allocation makes sense to you,
Mhm.
and just kind of stick with it, and have, like, say, a 5+ year view.
Mm.
Preferably longer, but I know realistically, like, a 5-year thesis for what this kind of is playing out.
Index funds are known for their network error to outperform most actively managed funds once fees are factored in. Conversely, opting for individual stocks can enable you to customize your portfolio to align with your specific needs. Alden has put forward three investment portfolios as examples, one being an aggressive portfolio, another a somewhat conservative portfolio, and the third falling in the middle range. All three portfolios are well diversified and consist solely of low-cost index ETFs, ensuring that they have very low total expense ratios. These portfolios boast expense ratios ranging from 0.1% to 0.12% since they incorporate an array of low-cost ETFs.
For portfolio management, because I do, I provide a lot of investing research. I focus on this full time, and generally what I'll do is if something is becoming very euphoric or it's become a very oversized allocation in the portfolio, I will generally trim that. And so, when I have, say, securities that are proxies for Bitcoin, maybe they're Bitcoin mining stocks, maybe they're
Mhm.
maybe they're MicroStrategy, maybe they're one of the ETFs or trusts that hold Bitcoin. If I'm doing that specifically in a portfolio context, and let's say I have 5% of the portfolio in them, and then they go up to 15% of the portfolio because they've gone exponential in
Mm,
like an 18-month period. What I've done in the past, like during this prior bull run, I said, okay, it's getting euphoric out there. Dogecoin's going vertical. This is tripled in terms of my asset allocation, so I am going to sell into the strength and basically, lock in the gains you've made,
mhm,
because that allows us to then maybe redeploy when now we're like in a bear market. And so I
mm,
do risk management in that regard, because I do have, a lot of people reading the research and they don't want to be caught off by, massive drawdowns. And I
mm,
never try to predict, okay, here's the top, here's the bottom, let's actively trade this. It's more like, depending on if it's euphoric or depressed, if it's way above kind of like like volatility adjusted price bands, or
mm,
below them, I kind of just make note of that and I say, well, okay, when it's euphoric like this, the probable range of future returns is now diminished over,
mm.
say, a 2, 3 year period. Whereas if it's super cheap, it's okay, now the probable range of future returns is better.
As stated in the press release shared with Bitcoin Magazine, Relay Business aims to facilitate the purchase of Bitcoin for small to medium-sized businesses within 24 hours. The company's goal is to simplify the process of allocating billions of dollars into Bitcoin for millions of businesses over the next decade. We will now return to the video to listen to Alden's thoughts on Relay Business and its potential for companies to buy Bitcoin.
I think there's a big market for that. I also think there's a big market for RIAs, like investment advisors. That's still a very underserved market. But focusing on small, medium-sized businesses, basically, a lot of people, when you're running those companies, right, you want to have cash savings, you want to have some sort of, optionality. But if you're sticking it 100% in fiat currency, you have this melting ice cube problem. And
Mm,
so there is like a pretty big opportunity. I think if someone, if the owner of that business or the owners of that business have done the work and they say, okay, this is likely to do well over a given 5+ year period, then, if we have a certain percentage of our savings that we don't plan on touching for years and we want to have that optionality, then I think that Bitcoin is a good argument for that. And then there's a very large market for where that can be useful.
What is your opinion on investing in Bitcoin? Do you share Alden's perspective or have a different viewpoint? Please feel free to express your thoughts in the comment section below. If you appreciate our content, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.